Hey guys, this is JLove47 and this is a game between me and owain99 on chess.com. owain99 rating is 1,248. At the time that we played, my rating was 1,144. Neither one of us are great players or grandmaster chess players. I guess you would call us amateurs. I would like to call us intermediate players. We're decent players, solid players. We don't suck. We're not whack, but we're not great neither. From 1 to 10, you would probably rate us around 6, 6.5. So we're capable of making some very smart book moves. um, but I won by checkmate, and it was a very competitive game. I made a lot of obvious mistakes, and he made a lot of mistakes as well. But I want you guys to just watch the game, look at our moves, and just leave a comment saying what areas you think I may need to work on or improve on. So here it goes. My first move was to d4. Move my pawn to d4. He threatened my pawn with his knight to c6. I then moved my knight to f3, protecting my pawn. He moved his pawn down to b5. I moved my pawn up to e3, giving that pawn on d4 more protection. He moves his bishop out to b7, and I take his pawn on b5. He moves his pawn down to a6, threatening my bishop. I had no other choice but to move back if I didn't want to get it taken. He moves his pawn down to g5. I move my knight up to e5, and I could have taken his pawn there on g5, but I decided to threaten his knight. So he takes my knight, and I take his knight with my pawn. We decided to trade knights, make an exchange. So he brings his bishop down to g2 and takes my pawn, threatening my rook. So I move my rook over to g1 out of harm's way, and now I'm threatening his bishop and his pawn there on g5. So he gets out of harm's way by moving his bishop up to e4. I then threaten the bishop with my knight to c3, and then he moves the pawn down to d5, threatening my bishop. So I decided to just exchange bishop. So I take his pawn, and then he takes my bishop, and then I take his bishop with my knight to d5. And the reason why I did that is because I realized he couldn't take my knight at the moment because my queen was protecting it. So if he would have took my knight with his queen, I would have just captured his queen with my queen. Okay, then he moves his pawn down to e6, threatening my knight, trying to push my knight back, and I didn't want my knight taken, so I just moved my knight back to c3. He threatens the knight even more with his bishop to b4, and I tried to push his bishop back, but he decided that he wanted to just exchange queens, so we did that. He went on to take my knight, and then I took his bishop, moving my pawn to c3. He then castles and puts me into check, and I decided to just move my king up to e2. He moves his pawn down to h6. I move a pawn up to c4. He moves his knight down to e7. I move my pawn up to e4. And he threatens my pawn on e4 with his knight to c6. And I move my bishop up to e3. He captures my pawn there on e4. And then I threaten his pawn with my pawn to f4, and I threaten his knight. He goes and just take my pawn on c4, threatening my bishop now. and I take his pawn, and he moves his rook over to g8, threatening my pawn, but he can't take it because my bishop is there protecting it, and my rook, of course. So I go on and I take his pawn on h6, and he decides that he wants to exchange rooks. Now, I didn't think he would do that because I thought that, maybe he valued rooks and we're getting towards the end of the game, so you want to try to keep all your pieces when you're getting to the end of the game so that you can have more pieces to work with, because it's hard to get your opponent into checkmate with minimum pieces. You want to have at least 2 rooks, or a rook and a queen, or 2 rooks and a knight. Working with just a knight and a rook makes it harder to checkmate your opponent. So I didn't think he would do that, but I guess he rather, get into a stalemate as opposed to losing. So he decided that he wanted to exchange rooks. So he takes my rook on g1, and then I just take his rook with my bishop, moving my bishop down to g1. He moves his rook down to d2, now putting me into checkmate. I had no other choice but to move down. Then he takes my pawn, on c2. Now this was the deciding factor of the game to me. That move right there, that was the worst move that he could have possibly made. And I used to make this move a little earlier on in my chess career where I would be so busy trying to get a guy into checkmate, or so busy trying to wipe out all of his pawns, that I forget about the pawn that was slowly marching up the board. And this was the deciding factor of the game, because now he put his rook in a position where his rook can't stop my pawn right there on h6 from advancing to a queen. Now it's going to be promoted to a queen in 2 moves, and there's nothing he can do. He can't move over to h2 and attack my pawn and then threaten my pawn on h6 because my bishop is there. So unless he want to get his rook taken, which I seriously doubt he wants because he's already down material, he can't do nothing. He cannot stop me from getting a queen. And he shouldn't have brought his pawn down, his rook down there. He should have kept his rook on his side of the board to stop my pawn from advancing to a queen. But now it's too late, so he can't do nothing about that. So I move my pawn up to h7. Now that I see that his rook pretty much can't stop me from becoming a queen, he moves his king down because he sees that I'm about to become a queen and he doesn't want to be put in check. So this right here was a silly move. I don't know why I did that. I just left myself with less material to work with. Me putting him in check with my rook to b1. All he's going to do is just protect it with his knight, and I took a knight for a rook. I don't know why I gave up a rook for a knight. That's kind of silly to me. It was just stupid. And I made another foolish move later in the game. So I moved my pawn up to h8, and now it's been promoted to a queen. He puts me into check. I move up to f2 because I want to protect my bishop. He moves his pawn down to c5. I guess he's trying to march the pawn on down to the other side of the board so he can get a queen. It's not going to happen though. I move my queen over to d8. He puts me into check at b2. He puts me into check again. Then he moves his pawn further down to c4, once again trying to push it on down the board, push it on down the field because he want to get a queen, but that's not going to happen. I put him in check. He moves his king back, and this was checkmate right here. But my foolish butt, I guess I didn't see it. I'm still, this is, why I'm not a grandmaster, because I still make amateur moves, and even sometimes they make amateur moves. But this was very foolish because I had an opportunity to close the show right here, and I just made it harder than what it had to be. I guess I just didn't see that move at the time because I was so excited. I guess because I was pretty much dominating him at this point of the game. So this is how the rest of the game played out. I just kept taking his pawns and dominating them. There's pretty much nothing he can really do working with just 2 pawns and a rook anyway. And moving his king down didn't make the situation better. He just basically folded and checkmated himself here. And that's all she wrote. Checkmate. I won this game using my superior chess skills, my intelligence, intellect, and just good decision making, because I made a lot of foolish moves, but I still had enough in my arsenal to beat him. He put up a pretty good fight. It wasn't a dominating win, but in the end, I was the stronger player. Peace. By the way, tell me, you guys, where you think I need to improve my game.